Hi, how are you? Welcome to the Titan York Show, and I promise you that this one is going to be interesting. I'm excited to be joined here by my partner in crime, Anthony Clifford from Titan York, and Raymond Wong, the Vice President of Data Operations, Data Solutions, Altus Analytics, Altus Group. Raymond, thank you for being here. Your insight today is, we've already had long conversations about what's happening in the marketplace in terms of vacancy rates, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity to participate.
Okay, so let me just, there we go. So Raymond, maybe you can tell everyone just quick about yourself, and then I'm going to say why you're here, because you're amazing.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. When people ask me what I do, is I've been doing the same job for over 30 years. I've been in research, mainly on the brokerage side, but just focusing on market trends and analysis. And with these type of opportunities and these calls is to be able to share and Aaron, based on our discussions the last couple of weeks, just exchange ideas and thoughts where the market's heading. So research has been sort of a mainstay of my responsibilities for the last 30 years.
So I can tell you that I get a phone call every single day from a client asking me, well, are rates coming down? Is there more space? What's going to happen? You know, is this a good time to renew? Should I stay? Should I not do anything? And you know, there's some really interesting data, and I wanted to bring that out for everyone to see what's happening and what's going to happen. So what we're going to do is I'm going to sort of set the tone. I'm going to set up the question. Anthony and I are going to set up the question, and then we're going to pass it back to Raymond. So I'm going to talk about what's in the market today, because this is the information that we have as brokers and the Titan York. And in fact, we get most of this information from Raymond's company, which is Altus Insight. So then we're going to talk about the new construction, its impacts, migration of workforce away from the downtown, and then forecasting 2021 to 2024, and then final thoughts and takeaways. So let me get going. So first of all, I think it's important to understand how big the GTA market is. So we're the 5th largest city in North America. So we've got Mexico City, New York, LA, Chicago, Toronto, or Toronto, Chicago, depending on who you talk to, with 191 million square feet. And there's only 14 million square feet available in this massive market. So that's 7.7% vacancy rate. In the downtown, and I think we're really going to focus our attention today in the downtown market, because it really is the one that's impacting everybody. And it's 78 million square feet of only 4 million vacant, so 5.1% vacant. And of that 5.1%, it's not here right now, I think you'll see it later on, only like 2.7 of it is direct space, and the rest is sublease. So we keep having this break from what a tenant's expectation, landlord's expectations are. The landlords are saying, hey, I have no space. And the tenants are saying, oh, look at this, we're in COVID, we have lots of space. So this is going to answer a lot of those questions. So this is the change. So the downtown vacancy rate in March, so pre-COVID, was 2.8%, which is like nothing. That is very little space. And you can see that it rose to 5.1%. So it effectively doubled in a period of 5-6 months, which seems like a lot. That's just a huge jump. But on the grand scheme of 78 million square feet, it really moved from 2.8 to 5.1. It was only about 800,000 square feet of vacancy. So here, I'm going to show you that right here. So I'm setting up the question. It's, what was the vacancy rate in March? What is it now? What's changed since then? And so this is the rolling 5 quarters. So I'm just going to point to this one right here. So this is Q1 2020. This is direct space. So it went up from 1.3 million of vacant space to 2.1. So it went up like 800,000 square feet. Again, in a market of 78 million, it's not that much of a jump. And the sublease space, oh, there's a ton of subleases that have come on the market. The subleases have gone absolutely fourfold from 224,000 to 800,000. Again, on a 78 million square foot market, it's still not a lot of space. Now, and but what's interesting about this, and we're not really talking about it, but what kind of tenants brought about those subleases? It is significant in that there was a lot of smaller square footages that were put on the market to get to that. So there were a lot of sublets on the market, but they were 2,500, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000. There wasn't, and there were a couple large chunks, but there weren't hundreds and hundreds of thousands of square feet from the banks and the institutions. And that's really what's holding the market right now. So Anthony, maybe you can talk about the suburban market.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting conversation because it's a little bit in contrast as we are focusing on the downtown area. But as we know, there's a bit of migration in terms of employees and the general population in terms of where they reside outwards from the financial core, as people are obviously looking to get out of condos and into freehold houses. And the reason why we brought this up is because there's been very little change in the suburban market over the last 5 quarters. However, this is potentially one of the markets where we're going to see one of the biggest changes. So you can see each one of these lines represents either Toronto West, East, or North. And they're all relatively flat. I mean, we have less than a sort of 1% increase in each one of those markets. And, you know, one of the topics that we're talking about is the migration of not only the employees, but also the businesses that follow that. Because obviously, you know, over the past 10, 15 years, we've witnessed a trend of companies migrating towards the financial core to be located towards your younger talent pool who wants to walk to work and have all the amenities. And now a lot of that age group are getting a little bit older, maybe starting families, and are certainly starting to migrate away from the financial core, which may represent an opportunity for big change in these marketplaces. So, but as you can see over the last 5 quarters, it's remained fairly stagnant and you know, sort of flatline across the board.
So, okay, so, and this is where here, by the way, this is called dropping the mic. Didn't drop. But the next slide is where we drop the mic. And this is where Raymond is going to help us. So again, very little direct space, a lot of sublease space on the smaller side, but no real change in the market from vacancy yet. And then the word is yet, but outside of COVID, this is what's happening in the market. This is where Raymond's going to come in. So we're at 5.1% right here. That's today, but they're building 9 million square feet of new office that's coming on board in the next 24 and 48 months. So about 7 million's coming on, 6 or 7 million is coming on in the next 24 months in 21, 22. And then by 2024, the rest of it will be on. And if there's no new so take this into account. If there's no new sublets and no new direct space, based on and if all that space came available today, the downtown vacancy rate would be 14.8%. But again, that's taking into account that 80% of that new space is already leased and of what we know will be coming out of the core, but we don't know how much vacancy will be coming out of the downtown, of the older space to go into the newer space. And again, it plays out over time. So Raymond, is there anything you want to add to that, before I go on?
No, it's and that's what a lot of owners are looking at right now, and whether or not the shift that we're sort of seeing is temporary or if it's long term. And if you remember back after 9/11, that there was actually a premium to be in the lower floors of high rises compared to the higher floors. And again, that didn't last that long. So a lot what we're going to see is almost new grounds based on the pandemic and the impacts of work from home. So this is new ground for research. So I think at this point, this is a really good discussion, basically on the wide variance of 5.1 to 14.8%. And again, it's whether or not what was actually going to stay as a trend and what will evolve and change over the next 3 to 5 years.
So Raymond and I have had many discussions, and I first came to him, I said 14.8, and he said, no, 8%. I said 14.8, he said 8%. So the rest of this presentation is to see what we really think the number is. So I'm going to go on. So there's factors that affect demand and affect the vacancy rate and affect that 14.8, because it's not 14.8% today. It's the time of the delivery of the new construction, how much space is being moved out of the new space, what is the absorption rate, and is working from home going to affect the absorption rate? So that means, like, how much space are we as do companies naturally absorb over time? We need more area for social distancing, new job growth, vaccine, leases are inelastic, where default to bankruptcy is going to. So there's a lot of different factors that affect demand and available rate. And there's a difference between availability and vacancy. Availability means whether there's anybody in it or not, that space is still leasable. And vacancy means that it's empty. So I interchange the two, but Raymond's are basically available space. So I gotta be clear about that.
And I think we also sort of missed out what Raymond just brought up after 9/11 was that push for lower floors. And I think you could probably add that in here as a point as well when we're talking about the financial core, because that could be another drive towards those suburban markets where there's a 2 or 3 story walk up as opposed to taking an elevator to your 60th floor kind of thing. So I think we could add that one in there as well.
Okay, so I'm going to hand this over. So between my 14.8 and your 8%, let's talk about the market. And Raymond, it's all yours.
Aaron, I think you're being a little bit generous with our discussion. I think in the last couple of weeks, we've had a few heated discussions about the direction of the marketplace, which was, by the way, a lot of fun. And to a certain extent, this is, I've been in research for 30 years, and this is the most fun I've had in research in a number of years, just because there's a lot of different ideas and trends that have been spoke about, especially in March and April. And now that the numbers are starting to show what are the real impacts in the marketplace. So that's taken about 6 months. So as Aaron and Anthony spoke about with the increase in availability rates, and it's not just Toronto, but right across the board, especially with Vancouver. Alberta always had that issue with higher availability rates based on the energy sector challenges, and then add the pandemic on top of that. Their Class A office vacancy rate is actually north of 35%. So again, it's a far cry from our numbers at 5% in Toronto downtown. But again, it's starting to move up, and we're not seeing the same increases in availability rates as of yet in Ottawa and Montreal, but we're starting to see some signs in that area, so that we might see a lag.
I think this one actually says it's creeping up, and even from the charts from before, you could see it creeping up, like going from 2.8 to 5%. It's an increase, but it's not changing the world from the landlord's perspective at this point.
Yeah, and the other difference that you're looking at, and again, with the financial crisis, the challenge was that space was coming up, but the banks weren't financing some of that divisible space. So tenants had the challenge with they had too much space. They want to get rid of the space, but they couldn't get the financing to redo the space to allow for some of the sublet. So I think this time around, if companies want to subdivide the extra space, that's a little bit more palatable and provides a little bit more options for tenants compared to the financial crisis, when last time we saw availability rates moving up at a significant number. This sublet and this gives you an overall market. So when you look at the numbers, and it's really dominant in Vancouver and Toronto with
That by the way, that is shocking, Vancouver. So for clarity, it doesn't mean there's 31% vacancy. What it means is that of the vacancy, of the available space that's available in Vancouver, 32.1% of it is sublease space.
Yeah.
I think that's really important that's right. Like that's what the slide's saying.
Yeah, and Aaron's talked about earlier with a lot of this, the sublet space is a smaller and shorter term. So when we see a bit of a dip in, and we're going to see this over the next 6 to 9 months, is some of these sublets burn off term. So they're still available, but percentage of the overall available space, the sublet number actually goes down a bit. So you just have to watch the numbers, but the challenge with the current sublets that are available is smaller space and shorter term. And if you're a new tenant, you're looking for a certain amount of stability, and you're looking at least a 3 to 5 year term, not a 18 or 24-month term.
Yeah, so I mean, we're really focused on the Toronto market, so you could see that increase from 1 year up to the next, and that's quite a big jump on the percentage of available space being in the market. But I look at Montreal, I go, that's also shocking that there hasn't been a lot of increase in sublets in the Montreal market. That's a very stable market right now, which I found really interesting to see. Like they didn't drop the square footage.
Well, same thing with Ottawa. Ottawa announced a couple of weeks ago, or Shopify announced that they're going to sublet their head office in Ottawa. So that's going to push that sublet percentage a little bit higher. And with Montreal, again, the last couple of years, or last few years, they were getting into more of a office recovery compared to the rest of the country. And their availability rates are still higher than, especially their downtown Toronto and Vancouver. But those are a lot of new tenants that have moved in the last 18 to 24 months. So the cycle's a little bit different, and whether or not that's going to impact that, whether or not we're going to see a lag, still remains to be seen. But the real story, we turn to the next slide, Aaron, is what Aaron and Anthony talked about earlier. It's the downtown. The bulk of your available space moving up is in the downtown, especially with Vancouver and Toronto, with Toronto going from 18.7% last year up to 35% of the available space.
And by the way, from my perspective, the majority of that and what I'm seeing in the market is in the downtown west. So the downtown core isn't shedding as much sublease space, but maybe 100,000 square feet changed since March, where really the majority of that other stuff came from the periphery of the downtown west and downtown east. So that 34% is that brick and beam space. Even though technology is still strong, there's that real sense of let's give up our office space, and you knew that was what the message was from the tech side, because they had so many people working from home.
I think it's especially since most of those sublets in downtown west are from your sort of smaller size. And I mean smaller comparative to your Googles and your Facebooks. They're sort of the 15,000 and below.
5,000, 2,500, yeah.
Exactly. And when we talk about financial core, that's mainly comprised of your institutional tenants that take up large portions of space. And that includes, I'm sure some tech companies, but a lot of your institutional banks and that sort of thing. And I think that's why it's so heavily skewed towards the downtown west, because those smaller companies are potentially more nimble and able to give up that 3 to 10,000 square foot space to work from home.
And that's a really good point, Anthony. That is the concern, because we know that a lot of companies are reevaluating what the work from home that is actually quite worked out quite well for the number of employees, but they're evaluating what people that sort of still need to come in, or people that work at home. The challenge with it, again, I'm trying to get back into the swing of it. Our office is located downtown, and I'm going back about twice, 2 days a week, every other week, and just to sort of break it up a little bit with work from home. But I've noticed that there are uh, not a big increase, but there's a few more cars on the road, and still there's not a lot of people going back in, and only that certain people that need to be in just because of either their internet or other people they need to interact with. So it'll be interesting to see in the new year on whether or not some of those institutional tenants that you mentioned will look at a shift and maybe reduce their footprint. And that's the big thing. So Aaron, if you go to the next slide. And this gets into
Okay, so yeah, so sorry, this
sorry.
is now talking about the new construction and the effects. So this is where we're setting up the discussion.
Yeah. So as Aaron mentioned earlier, it's 75% pre-lease or committed for the office buildings under construction, and in the downtown that's close to about 80%. So when you look at the need for social distancing, you look at the need for make sure there's air scrubbers or better HVAC system, and a lot of companies, owners over the last 6 months have spent millions of dollars in improving their HVAC system, as well as implementing certain protocols in their office buildings and allowing for social distancing to make sure that people that want to come back in the office, that they feel safe coming in. But there's going to be a lot of that demand in the newer buildings based on reduced columns. Sorry.
So okay, so just I have a question for you. So this is this is 9 million square feet of coming on, right?
Yep.
And this dot shows how much of it is leased. So everything above that is not leased.
No, that's it's a dot representing the Y2 axis at 25.3%. So basically, it's 75% pre-leased of that
Of that 9 million. Okay.
Yep.
So of 9, so we're basically saying that of the 9 million, there's 2 million that's not leased yet.
Yeah, you can say that.
And but to be clear about this, the 9 million is over 4 years, 7 million is over 2 years. So if I'm thinking if I'm really focused on the immediate, which is the next 2 years, and because my clients are starting their process 12 months in advance typically. So that, that it lends itself for the next little while. So that 25%, so let's say it's 1.5 million of space that is available outside, that's not leased. And then plus of that 7 million. So call that 5.5 million square feet that is leased. Of that 5.5 million, they're coming out of older space into that space.
Yeah, so some of that, or most of that, is probably in the downtown based on the tenants, but some of that is also in the suburbs. So I think the main impact will be in the downtown to try to backfill that space they're leaving. But there's some impact in the suburbs as well.
Of this but the 9 million is of downtown.
Yeah. No, I'm saying who's actually leasing the space, and is that space that tenants are leaving is going to have a adverse impact onto the availability rate.
So this is the slide that we love to talk about, and I'm not. So maybe you should explain it.
Okay, so basically, what we do is. Well, we're forecasting the availability rate over the next 5 years based on new supply and demand. And demand is we base it on StatsCan and our Altus economics team on forecasting employment growth over the next 5 years. Well, we've also adjusted, and a lot of the changes we're seeing now, this is not new. We were already talking about the average square feet per employee shrinking too much a year ago, just because it's impacting productivity or jamming people into the space. And so we started increasing the average square feet per employee. So when you have X new X increase in employment numbers, and with real estate, there's usually a 12 to 18-month lag when you add new employees, and that might impact the space demand. So we factor in a lag in the market, and we factor in the average square feet per employees, and as well as the new supply to get to our predicted availability rate. And what we're seeing this year with the increase in sublet space and the combination of next year, actually, sorry, this year and next year for the amount of new supply completed, that we've already seen in the last 3 quarters, the availability rate is moving up, and it's going to move up faster as the buildings are complete and that other space is available in the marketplace.
Okay, so when I started this and I said 14.8, by the way, 14.8 is above 12. So that would be the high point of where I was, where the numbers just said, if all the space came available today with what's currently in the market, we'd have 14.8%. But we know that over time, that's not true. So here's where the majority of the buildings, these green lines is the new construction coming online. And then these yellow lines are absorption rate. And this red line is the availability. So availability is like 8%, which was, you know, what the model Raymond has. And part of the absorption rate and that makes these yellow lines is StatsCan and their prediction on employment. And also growing companies growing over time and all the thousands of things we talked about. And my argument is that StatsCan, I think, might be wrong. Like, I think there's going to be a shedding of jobs, lower absorption, and as this comes down, this red line goes up. So I think where I've sort of landed with this line is, given that this is space coming back, and you know, Raymond and I always like sort of go back and forward on it, and you know, we both shrug our shoulders and go, well, we don't know. But if things aren't good, that red line will go up, and because the absorption rate will go down. There'll be less people hiring, or even if it goes the other way where it says less people working from the office, where more people are working from home, then this line goes down. So how strong is that work from home trend? How strong is COVID? How strong is the hybrid model of some people come in the office, some people not come into the office? How much square footage do you need even in the hybrid? So, you know, it's funny, we've all sort of come to this realization that if we're doing the hybrid model, our existing square footage is perfect because we've had to double it, we had to expand double for our open work area, and we still have 50% working at home. It's
well,
like,
Aaron, here's the I'm a research person, so I love the amount of data. StatsCan quotes the percentage of people working from home now, and not factoring in this pandemic, at 40%, right? So if you take that 40% and say that 60-70% based on increase, you know, hotelier space, increase hybrid. So you have people, certain departments coming in 3 days, and then the following week they go into a rotation, right? So that may, again, we believe that the average square feet per employee is going up, you know, for social distancing and other reasons. But we also believe that the footprint by tenants will shrink, just because the work from home and adjustments. And again, I don't think we're going to see wholesale changes in the next 18, 24 months. There's going to be an evolution of sorts, unless companies really need to reduce costs quickly and offset the sublet side. So this is over the next 18, 24 months, we're going to start to see more of a trend. And right now we're sort of speculating. We know that the sublet's going up, and we know that rents aren't really moving right now just because the availability rate is still at 5.1%. So it's sort of the market's fundamentally okay. It's the next 12 to 18 months that we're a little bit more concerned about. And again, it goes back to that whole thing with what is the actual a temporary change or what is a big shift in the marketplace. And with Anthony's comments on the suburbs, yes, we're seeing increased inquiries from tenants in looking at space. And there has been discussions of rather being in the second or third story of an office building and allow for flexibility for our employees to get in there and not wait an hour to get up to the 60th floor of an office tower just to get into work. And add commuting to that, your commuting now is up to, instead of 2 hours a day, is 4 hours a day to get in the office. Is that productive? Probably not. So we just have to see with, the question with your summary slide at the beginning, Aaron, with, when is the vaccine coming? How long will it take to take in place? And even if we have a vaccine, the amount of time that it's going to take to actually implement, and unfortunately, we're not going to be the front of the line. We're going to be at the last of the line based on the priorities of who should get it, this vaccine. And for people to feel safe and for people to feel comfortable taking public transit. I take a GO train from Markham, and that one day I took public transit, there's only 3 people on that train at 7 in the morning, and it's usually packed, right?
Well,
so there's a lot of different factors where we're sort of, this is what we sort of know, and based on what we know, this is our forecast. But again, it's really up in the air for discussion at this point.
So the one thing that we just haven't really touched on as much, which is as big as the amount of space that's coming on the market for new space, is what are the banks going to do? So the banks have said that they're not going to shed jobs until January.
Well,
after
no,
January,
but again, that's it's a lot of sort of discussion right now, and we're not sure when they're going to pull that plug or when they're going to make those announcements. And a lot of the strategies are being discussed. So I don't want to create the picture that January 1.
But what I'm saying is that most of the sublet movement in the market has come from a multitude of smaller tenancies putting their space up for, like, on one level, it's not a lot of space on the general scheme of the market. On another level, in terms of the number of sublets, even though they're small, there's been a lot of smaller sublets in the market.
Yep.
But when a gorilla walks in, like BMO or Royal Bank or Scotia or a large insurance company, and says, you know what, we're firing 15% of our workforce, and another 20% of our workforce is going to work from home, and we're going to put 500,000 square feet on the market in one day. And I don't think they're going to do that, but if they did it, like, that would move a needle so far, so fast that no one would catch up with that, because it's not just a lot of little tenants putting up space. There's like full floor. So, and I don't know if that's going to happen or not. That's just the gorilla in the room, right?
Yeah, and Aaron, sorry, Anthony, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say that I don't think it's necessarily only a case of them firing, these institutional users firing people, but it could be a movement of those back end employees that are not client facing into either a remote work from home situation, or potentially, again, that movement out of the financial quarter to a more affordable office space for that sort of back end employee that's not client facing. So it's not necessarily terminating everyone, but they could divide that sort of office up and still give up a huge, out of the 500,000, give up 250.
So this is the slide. This is the slide that.
Hang on, Aaron. Going back to just one more point on the other one, just to contrast this. So, again, I'm back in the office a couple of days every other week, and I'm a big believer of needing brick and mortar, and for people to be in the office for the accidental water cooler discussions and collaboration. And you can't just program yourself, or there's no app that also pops up, oh, you should have maybe a discussion with this person, right? And that's bumping into people in the hallways and seeing them at their desk, and it sparks those discussions. So I think that's still needed. Office is still very much needed. The other component of that, yeah, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, when you were getting this more movement into the downtown for tenants and expansion, it was because of the demographics. People wanted to live downtown. They liked the amenities and the restaurants and be able to walk to work. But what Anthony said earlier, there are some of them that are getting older and are having families that want to move to the suburbs. And plus, there's also some of them that have been sharing 400 square feet condominium for the last 6 months and want more space. But there are also people that still like that downtown vibe, that like to be close to museums and to different amenities. So I think there's still demand for that space to be downtown, and whether or not that takes. And for companies, they need that workforce. They need that talent pool, and that's one of the major draws in a lot of downtowns in North America. So I think we'll be seeing a shift, but I just want to provide you with additional perspective that we're not going to see. I don't think we're going to see a wholesale shift in downtown with huge vacancy rates and a big migration, but I think we need to watch the market a little bit more, and especially in the next 12 to 18 months, again, see what actually happens with companies and to look at where those requirements are.
So this next one, if you're a tenant watching this, you're just going to get really pissed off.
Okay, so this is our Altus assumption survey. So we ran this in April, and we ran this is the latest one in June, and it's our top clients on the ownership side. So it's not a tenant survey. So this chart back in April, there was a lot more on the decrease side for rental rates, especially with Alberta, and our June numbers is more of a shift for no change. That there are still predicted some decreases in the top quality assets, and the top quality assets are A and AA space, and there's more concerns with the lower quality of space of more of a decrease in that area.
So but for clarity, it was June. It was a survey of landlords who really
And investors
that really don't want to see rents go down. And, you know, if there was a side to land on and you ask the question, they're going to keep rents, you know, the same. But I think it's also, again, like, you know, I can tell you from my experience, and this is what's happening on the ground. The landlords are doing better rates, but not by a lot. And they're looking to buy up deals. So they'll say, look, give me the higher rates and we'll put in some more inducements. And even then, they're very scared to put cash out, but for the right tenant, they will. And free rent and other stuff to get them in. So is that a change in rent? No, but it's a higher level of inducements that are being offered. And you said too, there's just a couple more bonus commissions to brokers. Like you can see the landlord is trying to get the activity going, and they offer up $100 for a tour, or an extra bonus commission if you get a deal done, or something like that. And you know that you're the one that actually brought it up, and it's funny. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm starting to see those come out again. Like I haven't seen those in a long time. So it's you know, I think that my prediction is that I don't think we're going to 15%. I don't think we're going to 8%. I think we're going to be somewhere in between. And by the way, a 9-10% vacancy rate is a good, healthy vacancy rate for both landlord and tenant. That's not the end of the world. A 9% is what it was, you know, 10, 12 years ago when the market was just good. And it means that tenants have choices and landlords aren't landlords aren't bleeding like you think they are. The landlords have had it very, very, very good for like a good 12, 15 years in Toronto, with rates just going up and up and up. And I think what's happened is that even if they came down off a little bit, they would still be just fine, like from that perspective. And I'm a tenant rep, so I get to talk like this. But the I think the takeaway I have is that vacancy rate has increased, but not as dramatically as everyone thinks. The biggest thing in the room is the new construction and banks giving back space. The suburban markets, the fact that they haven't changed, from my perspective, is an indication that things are actually where they should be giving up space. They're not giving up space, which means that there's a level of activity that something's happening there. And like what's the COVID effect is not felt as much on the office side yet, but it's like it could be like you're standing on the side of the ocean and the tsunami's coming, and you're like, oh, I feel really dry right now. It's like there's something coming, and we pointed to a couple of things, but I don't think the landlords, they were panicking in June and July. I think now they're like, oh, like I'm getting most of my rents. And, that could change too with change of government programs. And so, I think that if a tenant is looking for a deal, they're not going to get it on the direct space. They're going to get the deal in the downtown on a sublet space. In the suburban markets, we did a deal for 10,000 square feet in Vaughan about a month ago, and we drove that price on a direct deal as far as we could. Like, it was a really good deal for the tenant, and the landlord was just happy to get him. And it was probably one of 4 deals that happened in that market over a period of 4 months. Like, it was just, it was crazy that a deal got done, and the landlord was happy to get it done. And reaching for it was the right move. So, what's your takeaway, Raymond? Like, what do you think your takeaway is?
Well, and I agree with you. And historically, that balanced market, and I would keep it in single digits between 8 and 9% as a healthy market for tenants and landlords. And we're starting to get some of the data. And again, depending on the take from work from home and reviewing the office requirements, and it's not just taking less space, but it's also the space design and for social distancing and how that's going to impact it. So there's a number of different questions in the marketplace, and as each month progresses, we're getting one more answer or a little bit more confident with respect to the market's not going to tank. The market that people are still paying rents. It's perhaps is a slightly different story on the retail side, but for office side, each month gets a little bit better. So it's just a matter of watching in the next 6 to 12 months and see what takes and see what some of the tenants finally decide on how to utilize their space and how to, again, you have to balance the workers that they're still they're the most expensive asset on what they're comfortable with, what they want to interact with, and just making sure that if the office is open, that they feel safe, or giving them the flexibility of being able to work from home or some sort of satellite office that they can at least go into some space that is a little bit more dedicated, that gives them a little bit more space to be able to focus. Yep.
Listen, I want to thank you. There was a question here from Chris Fivey, but we answered it before. There was a mixed definitions of available versus vacant space. We defined them what they were, and we sort of mixed them back up again just to keep things simple for everybody. But yeah, we thank you, Chris, for pointing that out, and appreciate it. And I think that's square feet of office. And we really just focus on the downtown node, but we're doing deals midtown, and we're seeing less. By the way, there is no construction really happening midtown. So you're seeing it's very static in the midtown markets and North Young and so for us, getting your input is really important to help us help our clients and thank you.
Well, I really enjoyed this session, Aaron and Anthony. So again, thank you for letting me participate.
Anthony, I'll see you soon.
Sounds good.
He's next door to me. Okay. Bye, everybody. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
Ray.
Okay,
Have a
take
good one,
care.
guys.
Bye.